that doesn't have an elevator and it's 4 stories, so that was another thing. We had a lot of those. And we have teachers who haven't been trained in dealing with people with this level of disability. So,
right. So what happened to,
so that was my mandate. So my mandate was to develop this center, and we became a training center for our teachers as well. And we worked one-on-one with the children, with also their families, their caregivers, whoever that was. It's always their families. So we had parent groups. We did videotaping. We videotaped everything with these cameras that were this big. Why? They were this big. Why do we videotape? Yeah. So we went. We made home visits as well, and parents came into the center. And we wanted to be able to track the progress of the children. Also in interaction, both in their own home, functionally, are they acquiring the adaptive skills they need to go to a school? One. And 2, in general, are they acquiring more skills, being more attentive, listening better, whatever. So parents were having a hard time seeing the progress of these very severely impaired children. They're very severely impaired. And so we videotaped so they would get positive feedback. So that was the idea. Yeah. So now people, I think, are still... Yeah. I don't know why. Since then, tons of people are doing this or whatever and calling it something. And, frankly, I don't see anything being done that we didn't already do. But, it seems... But there's been refinements along the way, that's for sure. We used a combination of behavioral, developmental, and family work to support skills. And the point was for the kids to only be with us for 3 months and then go to a school program. So most of there were many more private schools that were actually able to serve those needs than the public school system could. Okay. But there was the development of all these classes for the autistic, for example, and there was exactly one when I started, and then I started accumulating names and gave them to the Board of Ed, and once you had 12 kids, you had to open a class by mandate. And so they opened up in the course of a couple of years, they opened up 5 additional classes. So it was all because, nobody even knows that, but it's all because we actually got these names and handed it to them. And it was a legal requirement.
Okay. So they just weren't tracking.
We were finding kids. We were spending a lot of time, not me personally, but other people were finding, so the clinics, the hospitals, we did grand rounds in the hospitals and the clinics, to find pediatricians, to find these kids, some of whom were tied up, tied to the radiator at home, which sounds horrible, but it was because they would have really run off, they would have really self-harmed, they would have, the families were desperate.
Yes, I'm sure.
And the institutions weren't taking kids anymore. It's the usual way that it works. It's like it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. There's no subtlety in the...
Right. So deinstitutionalization, but we provide no alternatives.
Right. So now, we're going to just take people out of the institutions.
Right.
And we're not going to put any more people in. But we haven't developed enough community alternative. So that was the point of starting these developmental centers, was to develop the alternatives. But they don't happen overnight.
Yeah. And you were in charge of resettling people from?
Oh, I was. That was my first job as far as developmental services.
So what did you do?
What did I do? To my way of thinking, I was 22. It's not like I was so brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
No, I maybe 24. Anyway, I had this idea that the first people we should resettle are the highest functioning people. Because they could adapt more quickly to the community like another arm of Bronx Developmental Services, was working with a real estate family, not the Trump family, by the way, over from Queens, but another family, the Lefrax, who had Lefrax City, which is this massive complex in Queens. Anyway.
Wow.
So they saw, they saw opportunities like, oh, there's all this money, and if I develop a housing, a facility that can bring people out of Willowbrook, bring them back to the Bronx, give them their own rooms, and Bronx Developmental Services will provide support to us, I'll build the building. And they built, a much smaller building, let's say that would house 30, that would be apartments for 30 people. So my first thing was to bring out those people who could actually begin to live in a community setting that could develop skills, go to a vocational workshop, right? Might be able to use money, might be able to cross the street because they'll notice a red light.
Right. And I'm surprised that was permitted. Like, a building that would house 30 people. I mean, I thought that all these very, sort of strict rules came into force about about saturation, right? About how many people with disabilities you could have in one building. Something like that. But not really? No.
Well, maybe more so as it moved along, and then there were apartments set up with called supportive housing. So that developed over time. But initially, it was called Castle Hill Manor. So I don't know if there's
Castle Hill Manor.
Yeah, that was the name of that. I could be wrong, but I think it was... All right. I mean, memory could be faulty. I don't know how many people were in Castle Hill Manor, but I can't imagine it was much less than 30 because it was not a small building. And we basically, when I went to Willowbrook, so the first cottages I went to see, and then I developed this screening device. I'm a psychologist, that's what we used to learn to do, was develop coding systems. I don't know. I made it up. I just made it up. I mean, it wasn't, so it was kind of like the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scales.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that, but that's an adaptive, measures people's adaptation. So I just basically took that and changed it a little bit.
Okay.
Added some items, took some items away. And it wasn't like rocket science.
Okay. But you were looking for people who you thought could live basically independently.
Right, with some support, of course, because now they've been living in an institutional setting. They hadn't left the grounds.
Right.
So they knew how to have sex. They knew where to have it. They knew... Actually, the staff was often very nice to them. To give them whatever, books and things. It was a different relationship than you saw in the cottages where they were profoundly impaired people.
Okay.
In those cottages, they were warehoused. All these people in a room with a TV up there, and Darren. That was true at Letchworth a little bit too. No,
sorry?
It was true at Letchworth too. Yeah. Those did Melbourne work. Yeah. Usually I only saw it because his parents brought him outside. I don't know that as a kid I saw the inside of the cottage. I don't know.
Well, that's how institutions did things, right? They didn't want you in there.
They didn't want you in there. Yeah. So the TV would be up there. There'd be like nothing for them to do, wandering around. Anyway, so this wasn't that group. This was the group that could talk. When we looked into some of their records, we discovered, in order to be mentally retarded, at the point at which we were looking at them, your IQ had to be lower than when they were. Oh. So, yeah. So, that was an issue too. So, years ago, if your IQ was below 75, you might be in this range of intellectual disability. That was before the 70s, in the 60s and 50s. And then the criteria changed. So you had to have a lower score. Once you had a lower score, but anyway, these were people who were like borderline intelligence, who could read, who could write, who could exchange money, maybe, who could but they were very hyperactive as kids. They came from poor families, mostly.